Hello, I'm Jim Murphy, and I'll be talking about supply chain resilience today.
Royal Roads University acknowledges that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Esquimalt and Songhees ancestors and families who've lived here for thousands of years. This land has been part of the fabric of the life of Indigenous communities long before Hatley Castle was built, and it will be long into the future. It is with gratitude that we now learn and work here, where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, faculty, and staff come together. I'm going to talk about supply chain resilience. But first, I want to talk about what is resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back or bounce forward from a disruption. Resilience is also studied in ecology, public health, engineering, environmental and urban planning, to name a few other fields. Supply chain resilience is a topic which has many definitions and interpretations, and is important when discussing a disruptive event and the recovery from the disruptive event. The bounce forward or bounce back is assuming that the supply chain ends up in the same place, like an elastic band being stretched and snapped back into its original state. That definition is more engineering resilience, which looks at the ability of a system to go back to an equilibrium state, whereas ecological resilience looks at how systems change and acclimatize to a stable state, which is a better description of what is happening with the new tariffs in the US. Resilience of supply chains is also rooted in sociological resilience writings from systems related to complex adaptive systems, CAS, and the adoption and development of supply chain as a system which doesn't end up in the same place as the elastic band due to its evolution. One type of disruption is a geopolitical disruption, which you are all well aware of. I'm going to talk about geopolitical supply chain disruptions caused by, for instance, Brexit, COVID-19, and the trade wars. Political disruptions affect many supply chains of many manufacturers. Roscoe et al., in their article Managing Supply Chain Uncertainty Arising from Geopolitical Disruptions, Evidence from the Pharmaceutical Industry and Brexit, discuss contingency theories and the variables associated with large and small firms, especially with the disruption caused by COVID-19, which affected companies across borders, especially in China and the US. They looked at changes that come about due to external factors, which affect company variables, especially size and strategic context. They lumped contingency variables that can be found and grouped in four broad categories: national context, culture, firm size, and strategic context and other internal organizational context variables. They found that to implement strategy for disruption caused by geopolitical events such as Brexit, if the firm has enough resources, it can manage a strategic change. They found that large companies had enough capacity and resources to manage the change compared to smaller ones, because changes don't affect everyone equally. The result of the disruptions in the case of Brexit, COVID, and the trade wars is the increased interest in onshoring or reshoring, which is bringing production back to the home country. A new trend in supply chain management is the opposite of offshoring. It's called backshoring or reshoring, where due to any number of reasons, the manufacturing facility returns to its origins. The recent growth in tariff barriers has made reshoring more topical. There may be a research need to review the costs of reshoring due to the relocation of manufacturing plants who rely on specialty suppliers of industrial inputs. Reshoring and backshoring are used interchangeably to indicate a move toward the home country of origin.
Reasons to reshore. There are many reasons to reshore. Sometimes the initial cost savings of offshoring were not realized when offshore control and communication between parent and subsidiaries became difficult, and some thought the unit factor costs were good enough but did not consider the total cost of operations in the decision to offshore. Another aspect of reshoring is sustainability due to the proximity of suppliers and government incentives. Tech companies and companies who produce customized products became more likely to reshore quickly. Reshoring has happened from China as well due to increased labor costs, and companies who set up in China and Asia rather than Europe are more likely to reshore. Reshoring costs. There are views on assessing the cost of offshoring using transactional cost economics and the resource-based view, RBV. But they only focus on the ownership aspect, not the location aspect of the decision to offshore or backshore. A good measure of reshoring would need to be on a plant-by-plant basis, since large firms have many plants in many locations so that relocation success is more difficult to track. There is little insight on backshoring or offshoring at the plant level in research unless specific projects can be investigated. RBV does not look at external factors such as geopolitics, and TCE does not take into account supply chain resilience. The over-reliance has opened a gap because the theories don't go deep enough. Tinkle states that it's not likely reshoring will increase competitiveness in the higher wage countries, and it will not be simple for product and processes knowledge. Relearning processes will be hard. The learning process may take a generation of technological changes to be fully embraced. It can be a strategy to help the company adapt in ever-changing global markets, however. A potential way to measure the cost would be to look at the location outcome. At the firm level, costs and benefits can be measured. The effect on stock prices is measured generally and is positive for reshoring companies. Relocation outcomes have a few facets, which are viewed from different angles, including at the level of the company and the level of the region. It's more difficult at the factory level as an external researcher for comparison purposes to measure the effectiveness of reshoring decisions. The research questions about cost and relocation outcomes. Relocation outcomes have a few facets which can be viewed from different angles, including at the level of the company and the region. Financial performance, operational performance, and organizational learning are measured at the company level. Employment and economic performance are measured at the region level. It may be worthwhile to look at relocation outcomes such as the cost of relocation. At the firm level, costs and benefits can be measured. At the company level, the effect on stock prices is generally positive for reshoring companies, but stock prices aren't the only measure. It's more difficult at the factory level as an external researcher for access to measure the effectiveness of reshoring decisions. Interestingly, companies in a study exhibit no difference in productivity whether production was in the home country, backshored, or offshored, which is a little surprising until the corporate strategy is taken into account. Companies that have an operational performance strategy have better overall quality, flexibility, and lead time than companies who don't, when measured using cost accounting methods. There are other areas for research investigation in addition to manufacturing and plant relocation costs. There are more research questions that need to be answered while I was looking into the supply chain resilience, such as what are the costs of uncoupling from existing supply chain? A second geopolitical theme was related to an election where it's a choice between candidate A or candidate B. What further research could be done that have a certain set of results, such as an election, or non-specific results, such as war, terrorism, riots, for instance? Is there a herding effect where companies follow other companies blindly as they make their decisions about offshoring or reshoring? And what is the tipping point for external reasons including protectionism and geopolitical tensions, economic crisis, natural disasters, and results of reshoring previously offshoring manufacturing. A look at producer versus buyer-driven value chains to see if the backshoring is more prevalent in one than the other. And finally, reasons for backshoring were quality, transportation costs, and shrinking labor cost differences in coordination. A new reason, which has not been researched well, is because of new production technologies. Thank you for your attention and time.